Winter in Belgium can be a real challenge. The days are short and dark, often wrapped in a persistent grey. And on long cold days like these, you need a meal that promises warmth and comfort. Today, I make a true classic of Belgian cuisine, Flemish Beef Stew. To feed 4 people, I use about 1.2 kilograms or 2.6 pounds of chuck roast. I will also use 2 onions, a dark Belgian beer, 2 slices of bread to thicken the sauce, sharp mustard, stroop, thyme and bay leaves. I start by cutting the meat into large chunks. A quick tip, the meat shrinks a lot while it cooks, so you want to keep the pieces on the bigger side. My chunks were a bit too small after cooking, so feel free to cut them even bigger than I did. Next, I finely chop 2 onions and sauté them in my cast iron pot until they're soft and fragrant. Since my cast iron pot is a bit too small to fry all this meat, I brown it in a separate pan. There is no need to cook the meat all the way through, just get a good sear. Avoid overcrowding the pan. If you put too much in it at once, the meat steams instead of searing and we want that rich brown crust. Once it's browned, I transfer it to the pot with the onions. While many beef stews use wine, our gets its rich, deep and slightly sweet flavor from a very special ingredient, a dark Belgian beer. After removing any excess oil or fat, I use a Chimay Bleu to deglaze the pan. Chimay is a special type of Trappist beer, meaning it's brewed by monks in a monastery and the profits help support their community and charity work. If you can't find a dark Belgian beer, don't worry. You can use other full-bodied dark beers like a multi brown ale or a not too bitter stout. Using a wooden spoon, I make sure to loosen every bit that's stuck to the pan and I pour all that flavorful liquid into the main pot with the meat and the onions. I add more beer as needed, the liquid should just cover the meat. I am making a local variation of Flemish stew that's a bit sweeter by adding 2 spoonfuls of Stroop, a thick fruit syrup made by slowly boiling down apples and pears. It's a regional method of preserving fruit and adds a rich sweetness to the stew. If you cannot find Stroop, use a dark brown sugar instead. Next, I add a generous amount of sharp mustard, some fresh thyme and a couple of bay leaves. For thickening, I add 2 slices of bread. Now, I bring everything to a gentle boil. Then, reduce the heat to low for a gentle simmer. You can keep it on the stovetop or transfer the pot to a preheated oven. I set my oven at 150 degrees Celsius, about 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and then proceed to let the stew cook for 2 to 3 hours until the beef is incredibly tender and falls apart with a gentle touch. While the stew cooks, you can check on it occasionally. If the sauce has thickened but the meat isn't quite tender, simply place the lid on the pot to keep the moisture in as it finishes cooking. Now the stew is in the oven, it's a perfect time to start on our side dishes. But first, if you like this video so far, please like and subscribe so I can continue making Belgian recipe videos. First up, we have the most iconic Belgian pairing, fries and mayonnaise. I cover this quickly here, but you can find a more detailed video on making the perfect fries and mayonnaise in the description below. First, I peel and cut my potatoes into slices and then into fries. I will cook them using a 2-stage frying process. The first fry is at 140 degrees Celsius or 285 degrees Fahrenheit to cook them all the way through. The second and final fry is at 180 degrees Celsius or 360 degrees Fahrenheit to get them perfectly golden and crispy. For the mayonnaise, I use a whole egg, a dollop of Dijon mustard, a squeeze of lemon juice, a little salt and pepper, and add 250 milliliters or 8.5 ounces of oil and blend everything together. Last, a simple but delicious Belgian endive salad. I trim the bottom off of the 2 heads of endives and set a few of the whole leaves aside for garnish. Next, I cut the endives in half lengthwise. If you prefer a milder flavor, you can cut out the harder bitter core. Finally, I slice the endives into small half rings. In a large bowl with the cut Belgian endive, add salt, pepper, lemon juice and just enough mayonnaise to coat everything together. My Flemish beef stew is almost ready. For some acidity, I add a splash of red wine vinegar. On to plating, I spoon that rich, tender stew on a separate bowl. I place the endive salad in a small bowl and garnish it with those few whole leaves I set aside earlier. Next, on a plate I pile up a generous helping of our perfectly crispy Belgian fries with a dollop of that delicious homemade mayonnaise. And there you have it, a true taste of Belgium, a comforting, hearty meal that's the perfect reward after a long, cold day, or just any other day. Enjoy!